At 6 weeks pregnant, I woke up at 3 a.m. in so much pain that I needed to go to the emergency room to get surgery. I had to undergo surgery to remove an ovarian cyst, specifically a corpus luteum that has grown to 6 centimeters. And honestly, before this happened, I had never even heard of it. One night, around 3 a.m., I suddenly woke up with this intense pain on the right side of my abdomen. At that point, I already knew I was pregnant. So my first thought was, am I miscarrying? The pain felt really deep and sharp. I tried using a heating pad at first, hoping it was just a mild cramp or something. But it didn't help at all. I woke my husband up and I told him something felt wrong. At first, neither of us thought it was an emergency. He made me ginger tea, thinking it was just stomach related or pregnancy discomfort. But over the next few hours, the pain got worse and worse. At some point, I just knew it wasn't normal pregnancy pain. So early that morning, we drove to a 24-hour women's clinic that was nearby our house to get a scan done. That's when the doctor told me, the baby is fine, but you have a very large cyst on your ovary. She told me it was likely a corpus luteum cyst, and because of the size and the amount of pain that I was in, she was worried that it was ovarian torsion. So during the luteal phase, the ovary with the follicle that released an egg will become the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum produces progesterone, which supports pregnancy. Except mine was the size of a golf ball. It twisted my ovary, cutting off blood supply, causing me pain. She immediately wrote me a referral letter to go to the hospital. She told me I had to go to the emergency room immediately. And that's when things became real. So we arrived at the hospital. It was a government hospital. Because it was still so early in the morning, none of the HR reps in my office was in office yet, so I had nobody to ask which hospital was actually our panel hospital, so we just went to a government hospital. I was actually really terrified of the medical bill that could come if I went somewhere that wasn't covered by our company insurance. So we went to Hospital Tunku Azizah. The hospital compound was huge. I had no idea where to go at first. And we parked pretty far away from the department that I was supposed to go to. During that walk, I could literally feel myself fading in and out of consciousness. I remember feeling the blood draining from my face. I was leaning completely on my husband and he was basically carrying my whole weight. Eventually, he found me a wheelchair and he wheeled me in. And this is something I never thought about before it happened. My husband didn't have all of my personal details. So while I was trying very hard not to pass out, he was asking me things like my IC number, my medical history, my company information. Ladies, this is your sign to make sure your partner has access to all your details. This is in case of emergencies. I generally never thought that something like this could happen to me, and then it happened to me. Then came the waiting. Because it was a government hospital in Malaysia, my husband wasn't allowed to be with me. They gave me a number and then they wheeled me in and my husband stayed outside. So during most of this experience, I was actually by myself. They just gave me my number and asked me to wait for my turn. So there I was, sitting alone amongst a bunch of pregnant women just there for their usual checkup, while I felt like I was actively dying. No kidding, it was so painful. They even took away my wheelchair and expected me to just move around on my own. I waited for like 20 minutes and then I couldn't take it anymore. I finally thought, no, something is seriously wrong here. So I got up, I walked into the doctor's room by myself and I told them, I feel like I am going to pass out and I need someone to look at me now. That was when they finally took me seriously and let me jump queue. This is why you need to advocate for yourself if you feel like something is wrong, because otherwise you might be overlooked. They actually did another ultrasound and confirmed that my ovary was torn, and at that point, I was admitted immediately. Because there wasn't enough beds or rooms available, they kind of just put me on a spare bed and then left me in the corridor. And people were constantly walking past me and staring at me while I was wailing. I was wailing, like I was literally in so much pain. And I basically stayed there, in bed, in the corridor for like 10 hours. They gave me 1 dose of painkillers and then they told me that they couldn't give me more because I was pregnant and they were afraid that it would affect the baby. So for me, the pain really came in waves. It would be unbearable pain for 20 to 30 minutes and then I would get some sort of relief for like 10 minutes. The pain was constantly there and then the next wave would start again. Not gonna lie, I cried. Like a lot. I remember begging them for the surgery because I genuinely didn't know how much more I could take, but they kept telling me to just wait my turn. My husband would sneak in for a few minutes here and there because he insisted on seeing me. But other than that, I was mostly by myself the entire time. My sister came to see me, my parents came to see me, and they weren't able to get in to see me. They finally wheeled me in at about 8 p.m. for surgery. They performed a laparoscopic cystectomy to remove the cyst and untwist my ovary. Laparoscopic means basically like the little camera, like they use a little camera. So it wasn't like they had to cut me open, it was like they kind of puncture a few holes and then they use the camera to see what's happening inside. And honestly, at that point, I was in so much pain, I wasn't even scared of the surgery at all. At that point, I wasn't even scared for myself. I was afraid that something would happen to the baby. The surgery is finally over. I woke up sometime around midnight in a ward with 6 other women. I was still on my temporary bed. My phone was beside me, but I honestly couldn't reach it because I had like IV catheters in both arms. And I couldn't even text my husband. By the time I was able to text him, he was really worried, and the first thing he replied me was, "Thank God." I stayed in the hospital until the next evening. Once I was able to walk on my own to the bathroom, they discharged me. But even after the surgery, the anxiety really didn't stop for me because for weeks there was uncertainty on whether or not the pregnancy was okay. I got to stay home for like a month and I was mostly bedbound, and it was very difficult because on top of recovering from surgery, I was also having really serious first trimester symptoms. Things like nausea, food aversions, I couldn't eat meat, and I had extreme fatigue. The no meat part actually made it really difficult for me to get my protein in, made recovery even harder. At the time, it honestly felt really difficult to see the positive in what happened, but with hindsight, I guess one thing that I'm grateful for is that it forced me to slow down. I got to spend the hardest part of my trimester resting at home, and yeah, through this experience, I realized that pregnancy is very unpredictable. I wanted to share this because before this happened to me, I had no idea it could happen. I've never even heard of ovarian torsion or that when you're pregnant, you have a cyst. For most people, the cyst just goes away on its own. But for me, it grew way too large. And if you're pregnant and you're feeling that something is wrong, please don't ignore it. Don't tell nurses that you can still handle the pain, because at first that was what I did, and they kind of undermined the pain that I was in. And it made me wait longer than I needed to get the surgery that I really needed. And I could have lost my ovary. Emergencies really don't wait for you to be prepared. Make sure to have your medical information accessible. Make sure your partner knows your information. Advocate for yourself, because sometimes you're the only one who truly understands how serious your pain is. Yeah, so far pregnancy has been great. It's a very beautiful process for me, but that experience also made me realize it can be terrifying. And I think more women should be honest about both sides of that.